Hey, folks. Let's get back to it. The bonfire died down before long, but it wouldn't be much longer until daybreak arrived either. Without the fire, Conway decided to climb into a tall tree to keep watch. Inevitably, Asato and Ray were left alone together. With that in mind, he peered down and saw that both were nowhere near each other. They seemed to be sitting some ways apart on purpose. Conway leaned back against the trunk, smiling wryly. Conway sat down on a large branch and watched the murmuring forest open up below him. Comfortable, cool air rose from below. Suddenly, he remembered when Ray spoke of the bond between Toga and Senga. Their abilities grew when their trust deepened. What were bonds and trust? Ties of the heart. On the surface, he could explain it like that. But what were they specifically? How did they connect? Right now, he didn't know the answer. Ray and Asato, and what about the many other cats throughout Sissa? After taking a brief rest, Conway and the others proceeded into the forest, now a team of 3 since they'd met Asato. The greenery continued unchanged for a while, but suddenly it broke off and their view cleared. They'd made it through the forest. To their left was a wall of rock, and trees dotted the area before them. Not so far away, he saw shadows of what might be buildings. Maybe that was the village. For a moment, Conway stopped and looked in silence. Under the light of the moon, the silhouette of the village stood out eerily. Conway felt a faint tension running through the air around them. He sensed in his chest that Asato and Ray must have felt the same. What lay ahead? The base of his tail stiffened. After a short pause, Conway resumed moving towards the village, not waiting for the others. With the aid of the light of their torch, the village rose from the darkness as they drew nearer. Did they not feel the presence of other cats because it was the dead of night? Either way, a lonely, deserted atmosphere hung in the air. Finally reaching the entrance of the village, they set foot inside. Several small but cozy-looking homes were huddled on the side of the dark road. Other than that, there was nothing there. There was nothing. There were no torches or lamps lighting the way either. Finally, the scent of a cat grazed the tip of Conway's nose. All the doors to the houses were shut, but there were cats here. Not easing his caution, Conway felt a presence as he advanced more towards the back. He looked back. Eek! After that fabled shriek, Conway heard someone fall down. Oh, hello. When they landed, they saw a cat who had landed on his behind, watching them with frightened eyes. Although he had a torch and a small axe in his hands, they had almost been dangerously thrown to the ground. No wonder. Conway, Ray, and Asato had all drawn their swords at the same time when they turned back to him. "Oh, help, don't kill me." And the cat, exposed to so much aggression, turned pale and desperately pleaded. But Conway and the others, having drawn their weapons, now felt strangely disappointed. The boy squad was ready. They watched and observed the cat sitting there. No matter how one looked at him, he looked like any old village cat, Dang. Sorry about that. We didn't mean to frighten you. Conway extended his hand, and the cat grasped it despite his fear, tottering unsteadily as he stood up. You all, why did you come here? What exactly is your business in this village? We're just passing through. Huh, passing through. But why are you in this village? We're not here for this village. We have business in the forest on the other side. Oh. So you mean you guys are just traveling cats? When Conway nodded, the village cat cast a dubious glance to each of them in turn, but soon heaved a sigh of relief. What? No, it's not safe here. Bandits come around often, so I just thought you guys were... Sorry about that. Conway shook his head. It was late at night. With visitors at this hour, it was only natural that he became suspicious. Do you want to get to the forest over there? And they saw the shadows of the underbrush, darker than night, in the direction the cat nodded towards. Do you know about a place called the Field of Four Colors? Oh, you want to go there? Of course I know about it. In this neighborhood, there isn't a single cat who doesn't. The cat nodded for emphasis. When you go into these woods, you'll reach a clearing. There are stones on all sides, but their surfaces are smooth like mirrors, and when the light hits them, they reflect 4 different colors. Well, the reflected light meets in the middle of the clearing for some reason. I don't know what kind of structure it is, but it's a strange place. Let's go. Well, hey! When Ray tried to leave with no hesitation, the village cat hurried to stop him. Don't be so impatient. Listen until I'm done, stupid kids. Because if you go now, it's meaningless. What do you mean? The reflections don't work if the moon of light isn't shining. The moon of shadow does nothing. That's right, this world has 2 moons, or something like that. I remember that from the early game. What do we do? We can't do anything but wait for daybreak. But that will take more time, Asato murmured. He looked to the sky. Why not stay in one of our empty... Oh, that's not you. Well, why not stay in one of our empty homes? All of them turned to the village cat at once, making him jump in fright. No. As you can see, this village is deserted. Many of us have moved to Ranson. They said it was better to go to a town with lots of food, since this place is so small. Thanks to that, the number of cats here have really decreased, so even if you stay, no one will be complaining. Dumb kids. So why haven't you gone to Ranson? I guess I just can't leave. It's not as simple as backing up and moving to Ranson, you know. I have a lot of trivial memories here I can't leave behind. Well, I guess you could say I've grown to like this place. The village cat's expression turned gloomy, and a sad smile appeared on his lips. Conway felt like he understood this sentiment a bit. He wanted to return to Kaoru, even though he knew it was impossible and everyone there wanted to eat him alive. Conway, what should we do? We'll stay. Conway looked at Ray. He seemed to have no objections. Well then, I'll guide you to the house where you can stay. Come this way. The village cat began to lead them through dark roads. Let's hope nothing happens. While they walked, Ray purposely murmured these words underneath his breath. The village cat directed them to quite a spacious house. It wasn't bad. Though it was unoccupied, it wasn't particularly messy. Perhaps it seemed so neat because there was almost no furniture. There were 2 beds, one small and one larger. A family must have lived here once. Konaway took the larger bed, but Ray hunkered down beneath the window while Asato took a corner of the room. He thought that somehow it reflected their personalities. While wrapping himself in the blanket, Konaway remembered the words Ray had muttered a little while ago. Something felt unpleasant, uneasy. If there really was a trap. Konaway heard his heart beating faster than usual and wandered into a shallow sleep. Dream sequence. A sound echoed disconnectedly. Hearing it at odd intervals, Konaway began to feel uncomfortable, like a heartbeat right before it stopped. It was suffocating. What was that sound? His hazy consciousness was suddenly awoken by the chills that ran through him. Jumping awake, Konaway looked in the direction of the sound. Someone was banging on the door. Ray and Asato got up too, quietly assessing the situation. The sound was weak, more like someone tossing nuts against the door rather than hitting it with a fist. All of his fur bristled on end. What's going on? A heavy sound covered Konaway's voice. He strained his eyes. Something was peeking through the window. It was a hand. The tension rose, and suddenly there was a louder bang on the door. Asato's ears flattened, and he jerked his chin with a low growl. Something was coming from the other side of that door. A sound echoed as everyone drew their swords. The old wooden hinges seemed to give out at any moment now. There, Konaway noticed something strange. Why wouldn't they just open the door and come in? He was sure no one had used a key to lock the door last night, so if they were to turn the door handle right now, it should just open normally. So why? The sound continued to echo in the meantime. Here they come. As if on cue, there was a dull sound. The door flew open. In the square space, one cat stood still. If Konaway wasn't mistaken, it was the village cat they met last night. But there was clearly something wrong with him. As if all the strength from his body was gone, his head was bowed and his tail hung limp. Zombie cats! A mumbling groan left his lips, and... called it. His eyes had completely rolled back in his head. What is this? Konaway was able to muster in a hoarse voice. He kept his eyes glued onto the cat standing in the doorway. This guy is already dead. But he's moving. He's been brought back to life. You can do something like that? It's magic. Ray spoke while he drew his dagger. Manipulated by magic. This was probably what that clown was talking about. Then this was a trap. At that moment, a faint melody sounded in his ears. It was a song. Someone was singing, but this song was... it was wicked. Fear, hatred, sorrow. Disturbing remnants of these emotions stagnated in the bottom of Konaway's chest. Ray's tail flicked in agitation. So that's what it is. The cat who stood in the doorway shook unsteadily, and suddenly looked up. He had completely changed, his lips curled up, showing sharp fangs. The cat let out an intense growl, salivating, and rushed towards them. Ray pounced, wielding his sword. The cat didn't bother to evade, so his thigh was sliced. He staggered forward and collapsed. He moved sluggishly. Conway felt an intense pain in his chest and fell to his knees. His ears rang. It was the effect of empathy from the cat before his eyes. The muddy stream of emotions flowed in. He tried to control it, but it was too late. It wasn't anger or hatred that flowed into Conway, but sorrow. Hopeless sorrow that swirled with no way out. It's the blue snake. But it wasn't supposed to be like this. Conway didn't want this. He thought that it was much too sad, and it flooded into his heart like a storm. Conway. I'm okay. His shoulder was supported by Asato, who had rushed over to him. Dim light flickered in the edge of his vision. When he looked up, Ray's sword was raised over the head of the fallen cat. The pain in his chest became unbearable, and the sorrowful thoughts welled up inside. Don't kill him. Turning his eyes to Ray's profile, Conway froze. There it was again. Ray was laughing again. Stop! Conway cried out inadvertently. Ray stopped moving and turned around. The smile vanished from his face. Ray looked up with a stoic face, as though nothing had happened. It's too late for that. He's already dead. Conway was seized with mixed feelings. He couldn't dispel his discomfort, but now wasn't the time to worry about that. He told himself as much and replied, You're not wrong. Wait, you're wrong. The opposite. You're the opposite of what I just said. This guy is just being controlled. Then what do you intend to do with him? Ray's eyes shone coldly, and the tip of his sword pointed towards the doorway. Beyond that, Conway saw. It was a bizarre sight. Several cats slowly moved towards them. But perhaps cats had once lived in this village, but perhaps all of them were dead. All of these cats. Conway didn't know if what he felt was surprise, anger, or fear. His tail automatically began to quiver. A wicked melody entered his ears and spiraled into his brain. It was too horrible. Leaks? That lone word escaped. Was this what Fury was talking about? Conway. Why? What did these guys do wrong? Why? It has nothing to do with right and wrong. A strong voice pierced him. Only the strong survive, and the weak are eliminated. That is reality. Then the strong can do whatever they want? A dark light ran through that clear blue eye. That's right. Conway's gaze followed the groaning voices he had heard. But then, the cat who collapsed when sliced by Ray lunged out and held onto Ray's leg. But the hand was tragically severed by a single, merciless blow of the sword. A muffled groan leaked out. Without even twitching an eyebrow, Ray looked down. Sleep. He raised the sword over the cat once more. Conway reflexively turned his face away. A cruel sound echoed. The cat's emotions during his final moments flowed out. The sharp pain made Conway's breath catch for an instant. Breathing roughly in the aftermath, he glared at Ray. Even if this is Leek's trap, I don't understand his intention. But those without power are just toys to kill boredom for the are just toys to kill the boredom of the powerful. That includes us, of course. Spitting this out nonchalantly, Ray swiped the fresh blood from his sword. Konaway, if you don't do it, we're done for. Konaway looked up at the voice. Asato's Konaway, if you don't do it, we're done for. Konaway looked up at the voice. Asato's fingers touched his shoulder. Words and feelings are not weapons. You can't defend with them. Me, I decided that I wouldn't give up when I didn't want to kill Konaway. So for this reason, I'll fight. The dead cannot be revived. That's what the Elder taught us. Huh? He knew. He actually understood what Asato and Ray told him. After all, a weak person could be crushed at any time. That was the rule, and that was the law. The world was made up of weaklings to be devoured by the strong. But the strong can protect the weak, Konaway. Still, even though he understood it in his mind, he couldn't accept it. Without this empathy, it would have been easier. Until now, he reluctantly empathized with the feelings of various cats. Sometimes, what they showed on the surface and what was in their hearts were different. They could be laughing, but be angry or weeping within. And he felt the sorrow and pain of the powerless, mercilessly crushed. Even though he tried to remain calm, he wasn't very strong himself. Crying for mercy before his eyes, cats were relentlessly pierced by the sword. How much could they say with their bodies? To the side of the doorway, the cat given the finishing blow fell flat on his stomach and collapsed. His severed head rolled to an unnatural position. He should have died immediately, but the expression of his large, gaping mouth looked bitter even now. Konaway remembered his face when he said the village had grown on him. About to turn away, Konaway noticed the cheeks of the cat were unnaturally discolored. And there were traces of tears. Had he cried even though he was a corpse? Or maybe right before he died? Either was possible. It surely must have been painful. Because of the empathy, Konaway understood. Huh? Grasping his sword, Konaway stood up quietly. He took one step forward. Ray watched him calmly. Even though it was deserted, this village should have passed its days in peace. That had been shattered because of him. It was right. The legend that he'd bring misfortune to the world. This became true for the cats in this village, at least. If it weren't for him, they wouldn't have been treated this way. Even if it was a trap set for them, Konaway couldn't forgive it. Leaks. Konaway let out a muffled hiss and leapt from the house. Ray and Asato followed after him. The empty husks of the lifeless cats clustered around the house. The wicked melody always followed. It sang, by someone unseen. His chest ached even if he tried to control himself. The sorrow of the cats flocked towards Konaway. This song is... likely. Ray's words stopped there. The cats surrounding the house sprang at them. Their rushing movements were easily avoided, but the terrible look of their bared fangs was branded onto Konaway's eyes. We'll talk later. There aren't many of them. If we split up and fight, this will be over soon. Ray spoke briefly and dashed to the left. Konaway followed the look of his flowing hair. Are you okay? Yeah. Asato stood next to him, narrowing his eyes at the disastrous display before them. Return to the state you once were. Murmuring this softly to himself, Asato ran to the right. Konoe clutched one hand to his aching chest. This pain remained. They were the shreds of the emotions of those who had lost their lives. The cats before him were just empty shells. Konoe closed his eyes tightly, strengthening the control over his heart. Then, opening his eyes, he turned and ran toward the mass of cats. The movement of the dead cats was slow and dull, but contrary to expectation, they seemed elusive and resilient. Even if Konoe slashed with his sword, their momentum didn't slow. They must not have felt pain. At this rate, he'd just exhaust himself. After hesitating for a moment, Konoe grasped the hilt of his sword with both hands and used brute force to behead one of the cats. This was the only way to make them stop moving. Their bodies sank back into the ground. The sound of tearing flesh and crunching bone shook through his arm. Blood splattered and spilled, soaking the ground in dark red. Sometimes at the edge of his view, he could see Rei and Asato. The masses of corpses were diminishing considerably before his eyes. The dead killed twice over let out low, emotionless moans. Time passed as if in a nightmare, until no one was standing. Until no one was standing but them.